Tokyo was once a maze of wooden houses, 7 million people packed tighter than any city on Earth. In a single night, an attack unleashed more firepower than Hiroshima, not in one bomb, but through thousands engineered to burn, not explode. By sunrise, entire districts vanished and over 100,000 people were dead. Most not burned, but suffocated in the very shelters built for survival. How did a modern city become the deadliest firestorm the world has ever seen? Tokyo in 1945 was more than a city, it was a living maze. Nearly 7 million people crowded into neighborhoods barely separated by narrow lanes, some less than 10 meters wide. The city's heart, the Shitamachi district, stretched for miles with houses pressed so close that rooftops nearly touched. Homes were built from wood, bamboo, and thin paper walls, designed to bend with earthquakes but not to resist fire. Even the outer walls and roofs were covered in wooden shingles, and sliding paper screens made up most of the interiors. Every block was a patchwork of family homes, small workshops, and corner shops, all sharing walls and courtyards. On summer afternoons, children played in alleys barely wide enough for a handcart. Laundry hung from eaves, and small charcoal stoves cooked rice in tiny kitchens. Firebreaks were rare, and open spaces were precious. Parks and shrines dotted the city, but most neighborhoods had little room to spare. Streets twisted unpredictably, making it easy to get lost on foot and nearly impossible for fire engines to maneuver. Waterways snaked through the city, but these canals were lined with more wooden homes and rickety bridges. People believed that the city's rivers and the shallow bomb shelters dug behind their homes would protect them from the worst. Civil defense drills taught families to douse small fires with buckets and sand, expecting high explosive bombs, not a sea of flames. Most had no idea that their city itself had become the perfect fuel, waiting for a single spark to spread from one home to thousands in minutes. On the night of March 9, 1945, the sky above Tokyo filled with the thunder of B-29 superfortresses. General Curtis LeMay had ordered a new approach, one that relied not on explosive force, but on fire itself. Each bomber carried clusters of E-46 canisters, packed with M69 incendiaries. As the planes dropped to just 2,000 feet over the city, the clusters burst open, scattering 38 bomblets each across the rooftops below. These bomblets didn't explode on impact. Instead, a 3 to 5 second delay allowed them to punch through thin wood and paper, coming to rest inside homes and shops before igniting. When the fuses triggered, each M69 spewed burning napalm in all directions, sticking to floors, walls, and anything flammable. The bombers came in waves, spaced just minutes apart. This wasn't random destruction, it was a calculated grid, designed to blanket 16 square miles in flames. Pathfinder planes marked out a giant X over the city's most crowded districts, and the main force followed, releasing 1,665 tons of incendiaries in a relentless pattern. Within half an hour, thousands of fires had erupted, each one feeding on the city's timber, paper, and cloth. Firefighters and civil defense workers found themselves overwhelmed before they could even respond. The design of the attack left no time for containment. Instead of isolated blazes, the fires multiplied, spreading faster than anyone could react. The ignition was complete. Tokyo's night had become a lattice of flame, and the city's defenses would not hold. Within minutes, the fires multiplied beyond anything Tokyo's firefighters had imagined possible. Individual blazes merged into a single roaring mass. At the center of this inferno, temperatures surged past 1,200 degrees Celsius, hot enough to soften steel and ignite buildings from the inside out. The heat drove columns of air straight upward, creating a low-pressure core that sucked in cooler air from every direction. This inflow reached hurricane force, with winds as strong as 60 miles per hour whipping through the narrow streets. Oxygen raced toward the flames, feeding the fire and making it burn even hotter. As the updraft intensified, the firestorm became self-sustaining. It no longer depended on the bombers overhead or new ignition points on the ground. The city itself became the fuel in the engine. Flames advanced faster than anyone could run, leaping across alleys and canals, devouring whole blocks in minutes. The wind howled through the city, tearing roofs from houses and hurling burning debris through the air. Smoke blotted out the moon, turning night into an unnatural twilight. Firefighters radioed their surrender just 14 minutes after the first bombs fell. Their hoses melted, engines were swallowed by flame, and the air itself became deadly. Reports from the ground described a wall of fire moving with a force that defied belief. The firestorm's vortex pulled people and objects back toward the core, while the heat above vaporized water and warped metal. By the time the raid ended, the physics of the fire had become its own unstoppable disaster. People ran for their lives, but the city itself fought against escape. Streets that once led to safety became wind tunnels, dragging men, women, and children back toward the flames. The air thickened with smoke and ash, and every breath grew harder. In some neighborhoods, oxygen levels dropped below 10%, enough to make even the strongest collapse without warning. Many reached for their handkerchiefs or cloth masks, but nothing could keep out the toxic air. Some tried to shelter in basements or dugouts, hoping earthen walls would block the heat. Instead, these spaces filled with carbon monoxide and searing gases, turning into death traps. Families huddled together, some perishing side by side, untouched by fire but suffocated where they sat. The rivers, once seen as lifelines, became scenes of panic and tragedy. Thousands surged toward the Sumida and Arakawa, crowding the banks and bridges in the darkness. The water boiled with falling embers and superheated air, raising clouds of steam that scalded exposed skin. Desperate people jumped in to escape the flames, only to find themselves gasping for breath as the oxygen vanished even above the water's surface. Bodies piled up along the banks, some stacked 10 or 20 deep. Official counts later recorded at least 1,200 drownings that night, but the true number was likely higher. In the chaos, the city's last refuges offered no shelter, only a different kind of end. The firestorm had erased the line between safety and danger, leaving nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. In textbooks across Japan and the United States, the Tokyo firebombing often receives only a passing mention. Fewer than 1 in 5 Japanese history textbooks discuss the raid in detail, and American curricula tend to focus on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Official death tolls still vary, with estimates ranging from 83,000 to over 100,000, and some records lost or suppressed in the confusion of war. Wartime memos from both governments revealed discomfort with the scale of civilian deaths. Japanese officials downplayed the numbers to preserve morale, while American reports quietly shifted attention to the atomic bombings. The sheer horror of a city consumed by fire, and the fact that it was achieved without a single nuclear weapon, left a legacy that was easier to forget than to confront. Over time, the firestorm faded from public memory, its lessons left untaught as cities grew denser and more vulnerable. Dense cities like Tokyo remain vulnerable, even with concrete towers and modern firefighting. In 2023, Tokyo's core wards hold nearly 16,000 residents per square kilometer, more than double the density of Manhattan. The Fire and Disaster Management Agency warns that climate-driven heat waves and stronger winds are increasing the risk of urban fire disasters. Their latest report shows a 17% rise in large-scale city fires over just 3 years, and computer models project that the number of dangerous fire days could rise by up to 50% in Asian megacities by 2050. Modern buildings may resist flames longer, but high-rises create new hazards, stacked apartments, aging electrical systems, and crowded evacuation routes. Lessons from 1945 are still ignored. Firebreaks are rare, and disaster plans rarely consider the possibility of simultaneous ignitions. The conditions that once turned Tokyo into fuel have not vanished. In a hotter, more crowded world, the firestorm remains a threat waiting to be realized. Today, urban populations are denser than ever, and rising temperatures fuel even deadlier fires. The firestorm in Tokyo proves that once a city becomes fuel, escape is nearly impossible. The lesson isn't history, it's a warning. How many cities remain one spark away from the unthinkable? Share your thoughts below.